Hello everyone. My name is Jae-sung Kwak. I'm a professor at the Kyunghee University, Korea. Today I will guide you to a method for you to understand the nature of a project as well as the drafting a project concept paper. This is an order of my lecture today. Today I will give you a general method of drafting a project concept paper, and then we get into a little more details about the contents of the project concept paper, and finally I will show you a PCP, a project concept paper case, and the result management framework. First, before we get into the PCP itself, I want you to know about the project cycle, especially how the Korean government processes the project to understand that your PCP can be located in the very first chapter of the project cycle. The cycle you are seeing from the screen is from the World Bank, that standard project cycle procedure. However, there are many more project cycles in this world, but it could be 6 steps or 7 steps, even for smaller 5 steps. However, the project cycle is very similar in that it's composed of every step of a project, from the identification to the implementation and the evaluation. Here we divide the whole cycle of the project into 6 parts, from identification, preparation, appraisal, implementation and monitoring, and completion, and the evaluations. First 3 steps, from identification to appraisal, is called as preparation phase. In the first 3 steps, you prepare for the project to see the feasibility, and before you actually implement. So the implementation and evaluation will be actually the execution phase. But before you execute the actual project, it is important for you to prepare the project very well. But before you prepare, you have to have the project concept, which is a demand by the partner countries to the donors. So project concept paper can be identified as a very first step of this project cycle. Once the project is identified and you will move to the preparation phase for feasibility study, the feasibility study is ready, then you prepare all the documents and you move to the appraisal phase for donor and the recipient appraisal. And then you are ready to start the project by initiating a procurement process. Once procurement is ready, then you move to the completion phase. Once it's completed, then the project can be evaluated. The results of the evaluation can be reflected in the next phase of identification of the new project. So that you can have lessons learned and some implications to be incorporated into the new project paper. That's how we develop in the long run. Today, we're going to focus our efforts over the very first phase of the project cycle, which is identification phase. On your right side of the slide, I have listed several concepts that may help you to understand where the project is located. As you know, project is a unit of development cooperation with a specific objective, budget, and time framework. Project can make a bigger program, or the program is consisted of many different kinds of projects. So program is more like a medium-term initiative, either by donor program, donor country, or the partner country, or donor partner agreed program, like pro-country partnership strategy. The higher concept is definitely the policy, which is either the global consensus like Sustainable Development Goals, or donors, ODA, or foreign aid policy, or partner government, national development policy, and etc. So three steps are roughly divided as into the policy and program and the project. So project is a unit of doing your efforts into reality with a specific objective, budget, and time frame. In the next slide, I will show you how the Korean government is interpreting this project cycle, especially in the identification and the preparation phase. Very first step, as you see here, is the same as you have learned from the previous screen. The project is initiated by receiving the project concept paper, PCP, from the partner countries to or by the COIC office or the Korean embassy. And once they receive the PCP, they will conduct intensive screen or review to see the quality of the project concept paper. And they will select some good project concept that can be aligned with their program, which is country partnership strategy, and the Korea's foreign aid policy, as well as the partner countries' development policy. When they select the project concept paper, and then you are ready to conduct a feasibility study. So in the next phase will be a feasibility study conducted by the aid agencies, for instance, COICA, and they will select a good number of experts and then will conduct the feasibility of the project. Often they dispatch the experts to the field and conduct a economic, financial, and technical feasibility study. And after the feasibility study, they will receive the final report over the concept, more concrete version of the concept of the project and the feasibility of the project. So they will have a report, and after the report is received, COICA will undertake another round of screen to see which project can be selected definitely for the forthcoming years. Mind you, in Korea, there is a N-2 rule, which means that project concept paper should be received at least 2 years before the proposed target project date. For instance, if you want to start the project here 2025, you have to submit the project concept paper by 2023. So when we receive the project concept paper this year, you will have 2 years for the preparation and undertaking the feasibility study as well as the appraisal. So we spend roughly 2 years in doing this. So that is the timing for multiple studies and appraisal process. Okay, let's get back to this. So when you conduct a feasibility study, they will aggregate all the reports and go through an extensive review. After the review, when the experts and COICA authorities decide whether the project concept is acceptable and you can secure the feasibility, you can move to the actual planning stage. When the project moves to the planning stage, now you are ready to go. In other words, you can make more detailed project plan as well as you can go for the appraisals, as you see in the down there. In the appraisal phase, there are many government agencies involved in Korea, not only COICA itself, but also Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Economy and Finance, as well as the National Congress, which will be the final decision making for the budget of the project. So once the budget is approved ultimately, then now you are entering the project implementation phase. By selecting the project implementers, through the public procurement. So when the implementers are selected, now definitely you are ready to go. Here in this whole process, you have roughly the two competition round. First competition is among those PCPs, and second competition will be among those feasibility studies. And first competition is very strong these days because there are so many demands over the project here and there from all over the world, and then you have to go through it. And second competition is also strong because there are many quality feasibility studies that have shown the proven objective feasibility for the project execution. So number one is more like a quantitative competition. Number two is more like qualitative competition. So before you get into the feasibility studies, your project should be selected in the project concept paper phase. That's why we have to focus on the producing a good quality project concept paper. Otherwise, your project cannot survive. Okay, I think I emphasized enough for the importance of a project concept paper for now. Now, what is PCP then? What is project concept paper? This is the first document to be developed into a project. This is a proposal containing a brief description of the idea of the project and the objective to be pursued. And thirdly, PCP is submitted to donors without a formal call for proposals, but you definitely need a prior arrangement. I think this number 3 point is extremely important for you. You have already the country partnership strategy. You have already some relationship with the donor agencies. However, for this specific idea and specific concept, I think you need the informal contact and make a phone call or send an email and just briefly introduce your idea about 2 or 3 lines and to see the actual pre-feasibility of the project so that how the donor agencies, including KOICA, think about the idea or how the budget status is ongoing for the particular year. So you need the arrangement, somehow the arrangement. And then if you have a little bit of green light, then you can start working on the PCP. Fourthly, PCPs increasingly requires professional involvement accompanied by feasibility studies or pre-feasibility studies. This means that there are so many good quality PCPs this around. There's often they are competing each other in your own country, within the sector or beyond the sector for the winning over the project. And also often you have to compete against other countries' PCPs as well. So when you make a good concept, then you are more likely to be selected. So PCP should be interesting, it should be informative, and it should be integrative. And it's always emphasizable that you make and produce a good quality PCP so that you can go through the first round of the competition. And it's getting more and more strong. And before we getting into the actual PCP format, I want to emphasize just 2 things. This is just a tip from my own perspective over the good quality PCP. First, you have to always emphasize the global trend in development cooperation and to show that you are catching up the current trend. This is not just a freestanding concept. First trend is alignment and harmonization. So you have to align with the Korean government or other donors, especially on the country partnership strategy. You find some rational from the existing country partnership strategy and fully emphasize that your concept is aligned with this. And secondly, I want you to make some connection or connectivity or partnership with existing project, both from policy initiatives and global donors, so that to show this project is somehow interrelated with existing and forthcoming initiatives, not just with the Korean government, but with other donors or international or multilateral donor agencies. Next is why don't we focus on some cross-cutting issues? Typical cross-cutting issues is number 5, SDG number 5, gender issue, and SDG 16, inclusive development or right-based approach. That means this project may be ICT, technology, and administration related project. However, you have to show we always concern the vulnerable sector and the human right oriented approach, so etc. So grand slogan of sustainable development is always you don't leave people behind. So that emphasized the inclusive approach. Next, try to open any possibility of national or international resource mobilization. So no project want to be freestanding, as I mentioned. One of the greatest proof of being partnering with something else will be you show the very strong initiative of possibility of mobilizing your own resource or other international resource directly plugged in to this project. Okay, this is so far the little tip on the global trends. And then all-time trend is actually the development effectiveness. We want this project survive and sustainable and effective. To be able to do that, you have to well identify the problems and to show that this is a notch and this is a solution to solve these problems. That is called feasibility. Second, once you have a target or result, you have to show the enough component to achieve the result. And finally, you have to show the clear path from your own output to the outcomes and the more long-term impacts, so that you see the evaluability of the proposed results in the end. So that do not just cast out your narrations over the outcomes and impact, always present the evaluable indicators in your PCP. So in the past, we focus more on the presenting the component or output in the PCP. However, increasingly, this result framework over the development effectiveness is getting on attention. So you have to think about more on the theory of changes for the future. Okay, now let's get into the contents of the project concept paper as of now. You will be given a actual format from any donor agencies to draft a project concept paper. They are almost identical, but there are minor changes depending on the donor, and sometimes they updated the format. However, the basic frameworks are basically same. You start with the summaries, as you see in 1.1, and then you moving to the section 2 of the proposed rationale. And in the section 3, you will be seeing the project description. So there are more components here. However, I always emphasize section 2 and section 3 and the forthcoming PDM. But before we getting into the project design matrix of PDM, let me focus on the section 2 and section 3. Why section 2 and section 3? Because you are supposed to give answers for the two critical questions. First question is, why these projects should exist. And second question is, if you identify the problems, what are you going to do? What you are going to do in your own project. So that correspond to section 2 and section 3 respectively. In the section 2, which is titled as Project Rational, this is about why of the project. And first thing you have to do is problem identification. And problem identification is better drawn in the problem tree. I'm sure many of you have experienced in drawing the problem tree. You identify the core problem and you identify the primary cause and the secondary cause. And by mapping all these causes, you take out one cause and try to address in your own project and setting the core problem as an impact. So this is the way you identify the problems. At the same time, in the section 2, you have to reveal the current strategies and policies in your own framework. So you have this problem and this issue, and you have so far made some efforts with this strategies and policies. And finally, this intervention and this project will greatly contribute to address the problem in line with the current strategies and policies. This is a kind of a storyline of providing a rationale that why this project should exist. Section 3 is more critical because it directly mentions what your project is about. It starts from the long-term perspective of your project by showing the objective, moving to the outcome and the output and activities and input. Here it is written objective here, but objective is identical as goal or impact, which is long-term result that you are targeting. So the long-term result is shown here, the ultimate objective here. And then in the section 3.2, you provide the medium-term results and direct deliverables, which is output. And then show some activities related to the output. Mind you, output will be the deliverables when the project is when the project completion will generate. Meanwhile, outcome will be the medium-term results you can observe after the certain period of time of the closure of the project. Inputs are numbers, usually the budgets, you see. Activities are detailed ongoing activities during the project cycle to reach the deliverable of the project, which is output. So don't get confused among those concepts, and they are sequential from the input to the objective or the impact. So after this, and I will show you some examples over the cases of the project concept paper. And next will be the stakeholder analysis. There are many different and important stakeholders in this project. Probably the most important group will be the beneficiaries, because we are targeting for the improvement of the status of the beneficiaries when you conduct the project. So clearly identify this project, the targets. Usually, if it's administration's policy, you're targeting your own citizen, your own people. At the same time, you're also targeting the government offices, agencies, and public offices, officials who are directly related to this project. And then other stakeholders, lawmakers, budget office, and civil society, and even international players, they can be the stakeholders as well. So try to identify the main stakeholders that you want to see Sometimes they are partners, or sometimes they are risk factors. So in advance is very important to identify the stakeholders as well. And then accordingly, there are other components of project management and implementation plan, and also there are many more cross-cutting issues that you can show you. But I didn't show you in this slide yet, but in the full format, you will be able to find the other components of the PCP. Now, let me dedicate the rest of my time in explaining you about the cases of the PCP and how we deal with the result management issue. Here I brought in the case of the project, which is the establishment of National Identification Service, National ID Card Service. The ultimate objective of this project is a facilitation of socioeconomic development through the provision of the platform of greater security and integrity for the citizens. You are issuing the national identification card, mostly ICT oriented. However, the main goal, ultimate goal, will be the facilitation of socioeconomic development by making your society more greater security and integrity. And here we set the outputs here as a project deliverables. So you need a legal and regulatory framework for the national identification system. Sometimes countries do not have any legal ground to undertake this kind of new administrative initiative. So it's important to have this framework. Second, you need the ICT platform, both hardware and software, for the national identification. You have to register people, and you have to cross-check their identity, and you have to also provide a process for issuing the actual card to the people, whether it's plastic or e-card. Number three is to establish a reliable database of citizens. Before you issue the actual card, you have to register people. So once you have a platform, you will use the platform and to establish a database and putting the information of general public there. Not only you secure the public information correctly in your own database, but also you have to concern the security of the data to protect the people's identity. Number four is to strengthen capacities for managing NID system. You are involving many government officials and private sector in this new project. So many of them have no experience of establishing a database and dealing with the information of the general public or apply these NID systems newly. So many stakeholders we need to get the trainings for the new system. So these are the outputs. When you target to have in the conclusion of the project lifespan. So once this output is delivered, then your project will be finalized and you are moving into the outcome stage. Well, you are ready. And then next phase will be you conduct the series of efforts to have to secure the database and to issue the NID, national identity, and the next is the application phase. Because ultimate goal is not to issue the national identification itself. You have to apply it. You have to align with your existing policy for efficiency and effectiveness. Health policy, national welfare policy, education policy, and other economic and social policy will be very closely related to the NID here. So we set the two outcomes here: enhanced efficiency and effectiveness of government entities, management and delivery of public services such as the National Insurance Scheme, NIS, and the National Health System, immigration and border control management, and public safety and national security. There are so many sectors and policy areas that can be benefited from the introduction of this system. So you generally put the efficiency and effectiveness of your government policies. And then another outcome will be enhanced government ability to secure compliance with the critical obligations to the state, to include tax collection and among others as well. So this is another important section. So you have identification system that your country is more integrated now, but as a state there is an obligation and there's a role, so you can conduct your role better than before the project. So this will be the two outcomes. And then outcomes will lead to the objective that we set, like a facilitation of socio-economic development and etc. So far, these are the output, outcome, and objective. And this is another table showing the output and activities. As I mentioned before, outputs are the deliverables when you finally finish the project. But activities are ongoing activities during the project to generate the output. So accordingly, each component or output will be composed of certain activities. I would not go through one by one. However, let's take a look the number 2, establishment of the ICT platform for NID. Roughly, ICT platform is divided into two parts, hardware side and software side. In the hardware side, you have to establish the server and data center to manage the whole data. And then secondly, you need the database software to incorporate all the information of the public or citizen to have the national identification system, which is, so NID is a perfect example that shows a combination between those hardwares and software. We didn't put the activities in detail here. However, beyond the PCP stage, in the feasibility stages and proposal stages, actual project plan stages, you will see those activities will be illustrated in a much more detailed manner. So activities are detailed activities throughout the project life cycle of roughly 3 to 4 years. But we are in the PCP stage, in the concept. I think these are enough so far, and you can provide the rough activities and also rough budget plan for that. You can estimate the budget plan, and then you can make a grand summary. Again, the budget scheme can be more precisely presented after the feasibility studies. Now, this is the final part of my lecture. All the PCPs and any feasibility studies or any ideas of the project, you will be requiring to present a result framework or logical framework, which is a snapshot to show how the steps of a project will be presented and what are the indicators to objectively show the result of your project and how this indicator can be approved, and then what are the assumptions for reaching the target of each step. In the first column of this PDM, it's not difficult to understand because we already have addressed. That's the kind of replica of the section 3 of your project. What of your project? So you begin with the input. These are the budget or numbers, and moving to the activities, ongoing detailed activities in your own project, and then you present the outputs, which is the deliverables. Which are the deliverables of the project. And then by delivering the output, your project is closed, it's finished. You can finalize. However, the actual result will come out after the project, which are the outcome, medium term, and impact, long term effect or result. So the first column is kind of identical, but it's more systematic, little more concise fashion of the section 3, which is project description of the PCP. Section 2 may be second column will be newer for you because this is about indicators. So every step you are required to show the indicators. You don't have to present indicators for the activities. However, your indicator for the output, how much of the project deliverables will be likely. So how many people you are trying to provide capacity building program, or how big is your hardware size, and what is the specification of the software you're providing. So these are more like precise indicators with numbers. Actually, that's very important, numbers. That's why we call this objectively identifiable indicators. And in the outcome stage, also we are required to present some concrete target numbers. So we have shown the government efficiency and government effectiveness more strengthened and etc. Probably you can take out some national healthcare service status. So you target to increase the coverage of national healthcare service with this NID system from the existing 50% of the coverage to the 70% of the coverage in the medium term after the launching of the NID. So these precise numbers can be given here. In the long-term impact, you generally present then how this can be seen in the long-term perspective. The real impact on the long-term goal can be presented after certain 5 to 6 years. So you're likely more blur or general in describing this. So maybe this NID system can contribute to the further increase of the GDP per capita or more government efficiency and etc. Okay, and the third column is about how to prove each step of the indicators. So it's relatively easier than the first two parts because your output can only be proved with or by the project report, or probably the authorized project completion report. Then you have delivered A, you have delivered B, you have delivered C, and etc. And outcome is usually you conduct a survey. You show the national data that clearly showing the actual improvement of the policy performance. Or so more objective data proof is needed. Here in the final part in the impact, more government or national data will be needed to prove it. And then ultimately you present the assumption. Well, typical assumption in the output phase is during your project there is no delay, and then there is often the project components are sequential and linear. You have to install the hardware, and then software will be installed, and then later capacity building will be conducted. And in the course of this project component implementation, you prepare for legal and institutional preparation as well. So all this process should be smoothly conducted without any interruption. So the time delay is the biggest risk in this phase. So you set an assumption that everything goes smooth and nice here. In your outcome phase, you can assume that there are other policy frameworks supporting this NID system, moving also very slow, moving very smoothly. You have a very good partnership with the police department, with the Ministry of Interior, with other agencies or administrations to sustain the NID system. And also, in the final stage of the inputs, you usually use externalities So there is no outside risk like political risk or the economic risk. There's no major economic or crisis or credit crunch or some humanitarian risk, also war, also these are also the risk. So you put the assumption, then there are not external threat or risk to undermine the impact of those projects. So these are the snapshot of your project. This is called as project design matrix or logical framework. So on your right side, I listed up some examples for some principles of the drafting the project concept paper, which is a SMART principles. It should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be achievable, uh, it should be relevant, or it should be time specific. So we always remember those 5 principles of the SMART. And let me give you some tips, final tips for the drafting the PDM here. Input tips and activity tips are easy. You can just read on very comfortably. As I mentioned before, inputs are numbers relating to the budget, and please include possible in-kind contributions for technical assistance by source of funding. And with regard to the activity tips, and you always group and number activities by the output they related to. So the third one is most important tips here in the activities. However, what I want to emphasize is the output tips. Here, just want to emphasize one thing. How to describe the output activities and outcomes. And output, you always phrase outputs in past tense as already achieved, like vaccination completed or system installed. Include the action word, like completed, established, and installed at the end of the statement. This is the output description. With regard to the outcome description, you phrase the outcomes in the past sense as output, as already achieved. This is same, but you include the change word, like increased, improved, and enhanced at the end of the statement. So this respective use of different kind of description using the action word or the change word will differentiate output and outcome. Output, we focus on the completion of or delivery of the component within your time span. With regard to output, you emphasize over the change, which we want to bring it based on the output. So that's why you use such a word was increased, improved, enhanced, and etc. So always remember this description, please. And finally, what would be the order of drafting the PCP or the project design matrix? In theory, you're supposed to select project sector and set the long-term goal and objective, and set the indicator and decide the target level according to the goal or purpose, and prepare action for achieving target, and later you process the budget for reaching the goal itself. However, if you do that, it will serve for the identification of your action in a precise manner with reverse mapping. However, you will be requiring quite a lot of budgets for theoretical approach. In the practical approach, I think you want to figure out the budget scale first. Input first, and then you decide the output and organize activities and group components, and in the fourth step you set outcome and impact, and then finally you monitor the target in your own project. So in a practical way, so it's always important to set the scale of the project first in close contact and communication with other stakeholders. Definitely, the donor agency is the most important stakeholder. Okay, I think I have made a little delivery about the drafting of the project concept paper, which is the very first step you getting into the project. Thank you for your attention. So whatever questions or issues you want to raise, here is my email address. Please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.